Okay. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce you to the third webinar on a series of AFINet webinars. We already had Richard Wellerman, who had the first webinar. I had the second one, and today we're going to have Minna Ilva from Helsinki talking about the fragile childhood approach. Minna has made her a master in social sciences at the University of Helsinki and has been really involved in a lot of issues regarding family and addiction. She's also a very valuable trustee in the AFINet network. I think, well, she's the one who really is important in holding all the things together. And she's working as a project manager in this Fragile Childhood project, and also as a team manager in the Childhood and Families team in the A clinic in Helsinki. And they do quite a lot of issues regarding interventions and effects for family members and effects on family members, including online counseling, which is really important at the time of the pandemic. And yes, I'm looking forward what you will have to tell us about the Fragile Childhood Project. Just as a reminder to everyone, this session will be recorded. The recording is already going on, and after Minna has terminated her speech, there will be room for debate. And then we'll have to figure out, I will try to monitor whoever has got a question. So maybe the safest issue would be to write something in the chat box, and then Minna will answer your questions. But now, first of all, we want to learn more about preventing and reducing the impact of parental alcohol misuse on children. So the floor is yours, Minna.
Thank you, Gallus, and thank you for your kind words. This is a pleasure, and we're very delighted on behalf of the whole working group of Fragile Childhood for this opportunity to tell about our work to you. And also, I'm quite sure that there are similar type of activities going elsewhere, and we are very happy to hear from you. What are you doing similar type of things, and exchange some ideas and learn from each other. So let's go on. I have quite an exhausting set of slides. Like I said, I am here speaking for the next hour or so, but I have with me here my working group, and I will quickly introduce them to you. We have Laura Bark, who has been working with us with quite many years, and her background is in supporting and promoting in the field of mental health services, and she is supporting parenthood and working with families and parents with young children, and also with professionals, for example, in the maternity clinics. And she's also doing the counseling with adults. And then we have Janne Takala. I have been working with him for, I think, 12 years almost. His expertise is in childhood effects, how childhood is affecting in adulthood, and he is counseling our adults in these counseled online groups, which I'm going to tell you more about. And he's also doing PhD in this area, and he's our social media content editor. And Anna-Sofia Lehto, she couldn't be here today due to family obligations, but she is in charge of our services for young people, which I'm also going to tell you about. Like I said, I have a lot of slides I'm going to present you and lots to talk about, but if there's something I go on or hop to next issue too quickly, you can just then in the end raise your hand and we can get back to that and discuss and elaborate it a bit more. But firstly, I would like to set a little bit this in the context and where the organization that I'm coming from and about the prevalence, what are we talking about, how big of an issue it is in Finland, and then a little bit about the history, like we promised in the ad when we were advertising this event, of fragile childhood, the beginning of our work in 1986 when we started from, and then what we do currently. And then a notion about the terms. I use AFMs, that's affected family members. I use term COAs, children of alcoholics. But I want to make a notion that we all the time I'm talking about from the children perspective. So we're talking about children who are getting harms and damages due to parental alcohol use. And it's not often and almost never that the addiction problem is actually diagnosed. So the parents are not admitting they have a disease or they have an addiction problem, but there are a lot of problems causing for children because of that excessive drinking. But I still use this term just to be concise. About AFINet Foundation, yes, I forgot to say that I've started working at AFINet Foundation at 2006 and in this Fragile Childhood project. I think Gallus might have mentioned that already. AFINet Foundation, the organization was founded in 1955, so we just had our anniversary, 65th anniversary year last year, and we have a lot of different kinds of project and research activity going on in the field of substance abuse, addictions, mental health issues, and we do work close cooperation with treatment providers. There is the list of type of work that we do, but not only these development projects and research, but we also have people who do street work, so actually needle exchange, testing HIV, hepatitis C, and do health counseling. I have to say, just last week, it was -20 in Finland, so it was very, very cold, and they were our employees and volunteers were handing out socks and hats and gloves and sleeping bags. Even our communications director was there on the street doing that. So we do a variety various kind of work. And then about the treatment services, a few years back, the treatment services we are a corporation, we are AFINet Foundation, but there's AFINet Limited working inside AFINet Foundation, and they are providing wide range of substance abuse services, and that AFINet Limited is employing 500 professionals, and in the year 2019 they had 11,000 clients all in all. And we in the NGO side, we are a non-profit organization. We employ at the moment something like a little over 70 people. The family members and the rights of the child has been written in the present AFINet Foundation strategy, and my team was very much affecting to this. And what is it about? That we want to increase the access to information and improve the access to information for AFMs, and we also produce a lot of information ourselves, but we also link to our fellow NGOs work that they do. Then we want to increase the trauma awareness of social and healthcare professionals coming to contact with children and young and families and so on, and to increase the understanding of the over generational nature of the addiction problems. And then about we have written in the strategy that we want to increase the child sensitivity in the addiction services. And I'm going to get back to this in the end of my presentation. How do we do this and what does this mean? And then I promised to talk a little bit about the figures of the prevalence of ASMs in Finland. We are a population of 5.5 million, so quite a small country. They, at the National R&D Center for Welfare and Health, they carry out this extensive study research every 8 years. It's called Drinking Habits Study. And there they ask from people also that have you experienced severe harms due to family members or close ones' alcohol use in the past year? And from that, we know that 16% of women and 6% of men have reported experiencing these harms. Then the next figure is from our own study from Fragile Childhood, together with the Youth Link, this other service that we run. There we asked from 16 to 20-year-olds, have you experienced harms due to parental drinking? And from there, we know 29% has experienced harms on some level. And the third figure is from a very interesting study as well, which I'm not going to go in very deeply, but it has looked at health registers. And if in the health register you have if you have a referral to treatment or prescription for a drug for treating addiction problem, and then you look at the persons if they have underage children. So from that we know there are 65 to 70,000 children in Finland whose at least one parent has a substance abuse problem. But like I said before, the young people that we've been meeting over 10 years almost never say that their parents are in the treatment system or they're being treated. So their parents are not admitting the problems. So you can see that this figure is much bigger. But necessarily these children are not experiencing serious harms, or their life is not that awful. Maybe they are treated as well along with their parent. So at least the problem is known. So but this type of figures I wanted to bring to your attention from Finland. Then what do we do in our team? It's called Childhood and Families. We have this fragile childhood work that we do, and it's service for young people, Shadow World, which I'm going to elaborate more. But then I wanted to bring to your attention Addiction Link, and you might want to check that site because it's they have a lot of material in English. It's the biggest site in Finland on this subject. A lot of information, but also like interactive tests, like audits and tests like that. So go if you're interested, go have a look at that. And then also a similar type of service, but for young. And then we have also gambling projects, partnering project going on. So we do also deal with, for example, AFMs who suffer from close ones gambling. And if you're particularly interested in that, I can give their contact information. About the history and the early years of fragile childhood, it has been ongoing since 1986. So what is it? Over almost 35 years now. And it started at a clinic foundation, and one of the father figures was Tervo Peltonen. There's soon a picture of him. He was the communication director, manager, or director in AFINet Foundation. But the early forms of what was going on, they set up a telephone service for young. They produced educational videos, which were shown to professionals or practitioners working in this with children. And then this is a bit vague, sorry, this picture, but these posters and postcards are Fragile Childhood is very famous for. So very often we still come in touch with the professionals, maybe a nurse or teacher comes to us and say, hey, I remember I've seen this poster in the waiting lobby, and so this is how Fragile Childhood was really building a name very early on. And then there was also Mr. Peltoniemi was translating books and for example Forgotten Children and Claudia Black's workbook for children, leaflets and website very early on, and trainings for professionals. Tens of thousands of professionals were trained nationwide. And Teuvo Peltoniemi started this form of conducting these national surveys. So they were done 94 and 2004. And the promised picture of Mr. Peltoniemi, and this other figure here is the other father of Fragile Childhood. He was the development director at AFINet Foundation, and this is our anniversary, 30th anniversary logo we refreshed 4 years back. But the funding comes for Fragile Childhood from it's called Funding Center for Social Welfare and Health Organizations, and that's where our funding mainly has come all these years. It used to be a project every 3-4 years, but now we are more permanent funding, but we do have to report and apply the funding on a yearly basis. But I will, in the end, I will also tell more about the costs of what it takes to run services like we do. About the national surveys, it started from the idea that not very much is known about the target groups or the children and how big of an issue it is. And so we have been asking in quite many occasions and conducted a national survey on did you have excessive drinking in your childhood, and did you experience harms due to your parental drinking? And interestingly, although the comparison is not possible, there have been different variables. The research settings has been different from survey to survey, and the methods and even the target groups have been different. We have been asking from adults, young, and even children with parental consent. But as you see, the overall, the main finding has been same all along. So the fourth, even every fourth Finn has experienced harms due to parental drinking in childhood. Then what we are, as I said, we are very known, and Fragile Childhood was building a name and a brand early on with the posters and postcards like nationwide among professionals and people. But then what we are internationally known for are our campaigns, and these we have been doing with extra funding, not the one that I just described to you, but you know, we in Finland we have alcohol monopoly in retail. It's called Alko, and they are by law obliged to also carry out or pursue responsible drinking. So they have developed this program called In the Company of Children, and we have been expert partners in that for long, and they have been funding our campaigns. And the first popular one was called A Voice to a Child, but then Monsters was a blockbuster hit, if I would say. It has over 8 million views. Remember, we are a team of 3 or 4 people, but what happened was that we always make these YouTube films or these campaigns also in English to attain the international crowd. And actually what happened, CNN made a story of this Monsters film with the title like, "Isn't this the scariest ad ever?" And actually Mr. Peltoniemi was also interviewed in that on CNN. And we still get a lot of requests and contacts from, for example, US over this film. But then the next one was called AFINet, and it was also quite popular because of one Hollywood actor, Ashton Kutcher, found it on the internet, and it went viral quite fast. But the idea is with the campaigns that they are actually based on true stories, and these stories we collect from our target groups and from the people. How scary you were when you were drunk, and that was the main idea behind the Monsters. And Orphanage, it was about if children could choose their parents, would they choose you? And then the latest campaign, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but the latest campaign we actually launched in April, and it was it was called Declaration of Family Peace, and that was more directed to the Finnish people, because we knew that it was scaring us that what was going to happen when inside the 4 walls at homes, and so we came up with that idea. But if you're interested in this campaign work, we can discuss about this later on. But you can all watch these from YouTube. They are on our channel there. Then I move on to our work with young people. Like I said, this service is called Shadow World. We launched in 2008. That's about when I started. Well, I came 2006. And my colleague, Mr. Antti Järventaus, had this brilliant idea to write a comic book, and which was written by a famous Finnish storyteller. There's somebody who has problems. Maybe somebody can reply to him. So yes, it was written by a famous Finnish storyteller and illustrated by this young, talented manga-style artist, and it tells about the story about siblings who have problems with their parents. And we distributed 71,000 copies to all 56 graders in Finland, and it was a successful project. We did a reception survey, and 900 teachers replied. Only 2 teachers had not distributed the comic book at school. The other one was in the north of Finland. She was saying that because it's a religious area and they don't drink alcohol at all. But the other one was a bit more worrisome, the explanation. She said that our school resides in a good area, and we don't have these kind of problems in the families. So she was acting as a gatekeeper for the children. So, and then we launched a website, and children could come to the website and find more information if they found this issue interesting or relevant to their situation. And soon we discovered that these children wanted to find each other and interact. And so we piloted this 2008 summer, this counseled online group for young in Addiction Link, where we had these kind of groups for people who wanted to get off drugs. But we then managed to gather a group of young people and started a group with them. And from then on, we have been organizing this group. And when we launched the website, we did a survey, and 70 people, young people, replied. And we actually published an article on that with research professor Maria Holmila. And it was very interesting what the young people were telling us, how their life is at home. And more, we were interested on what they want for help. What type of help do they want, and what would help them to cope in their life situation. But I give you references in the end if you're interested in that. You can read more. But the head title of our article and the main finding was that these children are not invisible victims, but they are very competent agents. So they use all kinds of strategies, coping strategies on facing the challenges of everyday life. And what they really were wishing for were the like places they could go when things get rough at home. So they didn't want to leave their childhood families home forever, but they wanted to go to youth centers and similar type of places when it's really, really difficult. So especially coming back to the COVID situation, it's quite sad that all these people, all these places are now shut during this COVID epidemic. Quickly about the organization of the or how we run these groups online. With our current resources, we are only able to do 2 groups per year. First is in the spring, we have a group for young who are 17 and older, and then in the fall for younger children. There are approximately usually 10 participants sign up with their nicknames for each group, so it's anonymous. We reach and find the participants mainly via using via social media and networking. So it's a very low cost way of advertising the groups. We have 2 professional counselors, and at the moment, for example, the other one who has been counseling several groups, she works daily, or her job is and she's a psychiatric nurse in a psychiatric ward for young people, and they work on an hourly basis for us. Then I mentioned Anna-Sofia, my colleague, who is administrating these groups, and we provide them professional guidance and also professional work counseling. The technical platform that we use is a discussion board. We use open source Drupal-based discussion board. So they register, and then they, with their nickname, is then linked to so it's a closed for other people. So it's only for the participants to see and write. And then we also have chat technology. So every week during the group, they also organize chat sessions, and this is really good in building cohesion and sort of a peer support among the members. And then they have these themes or assignments every week or every other week, and we use these type of assignments that are used in child protection. For example, the daily clock. That's how we get idea of how their daily life really is, how late they go to sleep, how they didn't actually get to sleep at all, or they eat very irregularly, and so that is a really handy tool to get to know the young people and how their daily routines or how their daily life is. Or we use all kinds of naming your emotions type of or family tree, but there are all kinds of assignments that they do every other week with the young people. Chats I mentioned, and yes, we also do make child protection notices when and if needed, because we are by law we need to do that, and of course we do it, but really often we do it together with the young people. So that's how we provide them also information. We want to tell them that it's nothing to be scared of, and you're not taking into custody immediately unless the situation really requires that. But we never do it behind their back. So we play with we are very honest about how they and direct with the young people. And only a few times the young person hasn't told us the contact details or has got angry at us that we tell them that we really need to do this and work with child protection now. And we have clear rules and ethical guidelines, and we interact with other NGOs who do similar type of chat work, for example, with young people, and we take data protection very seriously. But the feedback that we get from the young people is very encouraging. They tell us that this group has helped me to see I'm not alone, and it helped me to open up and teach me to trust and handle my feelings. And what is great about it, like sometimes we get these young coming back to us after years. For example, this one young lady came back to us saying that she's doing really well. She's working as a expert by experience. She has a boyfriend and she's studying and so on. And she wanted to thank the counselors that they helped her through rough times. We write reports on each group, after each group, and also like interviews, or the counselors write their what they notice or what they learn from the young. And we have been collecting. We had a student who looked at all the reports over 10 years, and this is what type of things the young people themselves brought up. The cutting oneself is very worrisome, and it's very common with the young girls. I forgot to say that a typical, usually it's a girl of 15 or 16-year-old who participate in our group. We do not reach boys, unfortunately. This type of writing method does not appeal to boys. We have had boys, but very few. So I would like to talk more about that in the end, if or have a discussion how we can reach. We have thought about all kinds of gaming stuff, but or typical or alike, but it's costly, and we haven't managed to reach boys as much as we wanted. But yes, and what I wanted to say that it's very much similar to 5-step method and steps to cope that we do. It's about providing these young people information. Well, first of all, they want to tell what the life is for them every day. They come back to us and they write on the like, today this happened, and or I'm 16-year-old and this is the first time ever I talk about this, and even though the drinking has been going on as long as I remember. So we really give them an opportunity to open up and tell about then we give them information, what is alcoholism as a disease, and what is child protection and so on. We find coping strategies together with them, and most of all, we do want to find an adult in their life, like close by. Is there? Could you now have courage to tell about this to your teacher or the psychologist at school? And quite often we succeed in that, or they are already in some service, but we then sort of help them or walk by them while they go through some process of going to psychologist or child protection. So it's not, it can be either. It's about carrying them through difficult time of life but also finding extra help or help nearby and working next to other services. So it can be all that. We know that we have discovered there are other online interventions for young, and here are some examples. The Gruppel in Sweden is actually based on the Skopstoring in Holland, and there was an interesting sort of a course model also in this is in Australia, this Mitspot, and I also give you references on articles if you are interested. But these are more like course-like and set, and they have like strict models that they and strict themes that they follow. Like on first week we talk about this, and second and third. And so in our groups we are more flexible. It's the counselors according to their profession, how they read the young people, and they consult with us administrators. Like, okay, these young people want to talk about this issue now. Do you think we should now put along this theme and this assignment? So it's not so strict curriculum, if you understand what I'm saying, compared to this other online interventions. Then about reaching out to adult children of alcoholics, we do similar type of work that we do with young people. I mean, the group online, we organize these online peer support groups for adults. And this is only like 4 years, I believe, we have been doing so. It was always our focus. We had the focus on children and young people, but then we had more and more adults coming back to us telling that there isn't any support and there isn't any help available for us. Yes, there are Al-Anons, I know, and they're doing a terrific job, but that was not enough. And so we started responding to their wishes and started setting up these groups for them as well. And in the beginning, we got like hundreds of applications, and we could only take like 10 or 12, and that was difficult for us. So now what we have done is that we open the application time or make it quite short, but we also choose a theme for a group. The last theme was actually in the fall, where the people were also having like issues with alcohol use themselves. That was the theme, or loneliness or social isolation was one of our themes. The group before. So that we do with adults. We provide a lot of information on our website on how childhood can affect in the adulthood. We do group theme chats every 3 weeks. Anybody can join. They are quite popular, but we always get nice group of around 14 people or so. The next theme is anger. The last theme we have had like sorrow, or we have had drawing lines to your parents. We have different kind of themes for every chat. And then we also provide one-to-one chat counseling with the booking. We are very active in social media. We have a lot of Facebook followers. There's also one group in Facebook we are only administering. So it's also sort of a kind of a non-counseled online peer support group in Facebook. So people actually do discuss openly with their own names and faces about these matters. Oops, sorry. But what I wanted to bring up from here is that we do joint project with Culture Field. So we've been doing, for example, participating in theater play and organizing like discussion sessions around a book on this subject, or musicians, or documentaries. And that has been really interesting. Especially our Janne is very interested in collaborating cultural field. So this fragile childhood or this childhood can affect in various ways and in your work life and relationship and in parenthood. And I've put that parenthood in bold because we did have had a project on organizing peer support groups for parents with young children, and these are face-to-face groups, and we did that in different cities in Finland. We found a local NGO, trained counselors from the local NGOs, and then they were doing the counseling. Then we organized, right before the group would start, we would organize a seminar in the area for professionals or practitioners who work with these people, where they could then tell their patient or customer or client that this group is starting, hey, this would be something for you. And then we helped with marketing and other arrangements. And from the feedback we get from the participants in these, again, 9 to 10 week group have been really rewarding. We just had a group of fathers in my hometown, actually, in a small town, and there were 7 fathers, young fathers, and it was incredible what they were saying, how mind-blowing this peer support group had been for them. And then I wanted to tell you that we are doing this kind of development work, and the material that we produce, we test it and we ask reviews from our focus group. So we have gathered a focus group of our people who have been in our counseled groups, and some of them are even trained to be experts by experience. And this type of information we organize like twice a year this workshop where we have different types of assignments for them. We might ask them to review our website, our new website, or we ask them to produce material we can then use in our trainings, for example, at the maternity clinics. And this is the type of information we get. For example, what has prevented help seeking in adulthood now that you are a parent and you have suffered a difficult childhood and where there's a lot of neglect and violence and whatnot, and now you have become a parent, and you see that you are exhausted and you don't know how to be a parent, how to handle the feelings of the child you're getting, and you face all kinds of problems that are now sort of triggered for being a parent. And this is the type of things that they tell us. And then we take this information and we go to these trainings and we tell them and share this with practitioners who work, for example, maternity clinic, and say like, hey, maybe you should ask from this mother who has a 6-month-old baby and who is exhausted, and if you might see the root cause of what is happening there, and you see she has actually a tough childhood and she has issues she hasn't dealt with and she needs support for that. And so if you get my point, but this is the type of work we do. And also we bring these experts by experience to our trainings when we meet these people, and they tell not only their story, but they have a really powerful message on how to bring up these issues, which are often very hidden and behind a shame and guilt and loyalty and family secrets and facades and so on. But so the feedback we are getting from people from these peer support groups is really encouraging. People understand they are not alone. They start understanding why they act the way they do, in relationship and in situations. And interestingly, Janne, my colleague, just wrote an article for this mental health NGO journal, and he was a few points were interesting to me was that people are actually seeking help as an adult in the phase when something positive is happening to them, like when you're having a baby or you're entering in a promising relationship. And that's when they start thinking that, okay, I don't want to screw this up. I need help. I want to handle my issues. So it's in the positive phase of their life that they want to go through their things. Or the other thing is that they might have been, what Janne brought up was that they might have been seeking help for long. They have been trying different types of things, even psychotherapy, but they feel like it has not helped properly. I'm not saying psychotherapy is not helping. Yes, probably, but for some it doesn't, or something else. And it's positive that they keep on searching and see what type of help is good for them. So that was another remark Janne made in that article, that failing of some form of help might only open up a door for something else. So like I said already, it provides understanding, conflict relief, you're not alone, sharing experiences, and understanding like the way or my qualities or my traits are not because I'm a bad person, but because of it's deriving or coming from my burdensome childhood. And it's really groundbreaking for them to realize it is so, and they do that in a group. And the type of discussions they do with adults, how should I deal with my elderly parents today? Where do I draw my lines? Do I have to answer the telephone every time my drunken mother calls? Can I let my children to meet the grandparents? And these type of issues. And it's about the evaluation of our groups. It's with the young people, we are struggling all the time. They don't necessarily ever fill the forms when we then ask them. So we rely a lot on the counselors and also what the kids write there during the group. But when we ask them, go fill this form and give us evaluation, they don't want to do that necessarily. But with the adults, it's the grade what we are reading. So on a scale from 1 to 5, this 5 is like it has been extremely helpful, and I have really benefited from this group. So only last year the group they gave 4.8. So they say that it's extremely helpful. They have it's quite small, but helped me to notice good things in myself and increased my knowledge of coping with my childhood. So it's all over 4 on scale 1 to 5. But maybe that's what I would be interested to talk about, like how do we build sort of a scientific evidence on the effectiveness, and should we go more towards sort of a modeling these interventions that we do? Like I said, we would want to be more research orientated, but we absolutely have no time and no funding and no resources. But maybe we have to collaborate more with the researchers on this. And we always do ask from the people who participate on our groups to give a consent for research purposes. So that's really not the problem. But we can get back to that. I'm coming to an end, but like I said, we do work with professionals who work with children, young and families, and they always ask when they invite us for can you come to give us a presentation, they always ask for tools to work with children or tools to how to bring this up. So we have been responding to that request. So this is a picture of a storybook we produced. There's a link we have translated in English. And this is a website we built for professionals to be, so students who are studying for the field of social and health. Yes, this I wanted to bring up. I promised to tell you about how do we increase the child sensitivity in addiction treatment services. And this is one way. There's a method called Let's Talk About Children. It's an effective child and family method. It was actually originally, I think, formulated in or built in Australia. There's a professor in Finland who has been Tytti Solantau, who and her working group who have been modifying it for Finnish purposes. I give you a link there, and there are a lot of scholarly articles on this. But it's about working with the adult, for example, an adult who comes to substance abuse treatment, and it's about talking about his or her children during those intervention sessions. And Laura, my colleague, has trained to be a trainer, and we just historically trained. She did with her colleague 13 healthcare substance abuse treatment professionals on this method. Then finally, about the costs, and in a nutshell, so we are at the moment 3.8 people working on this project, and then we have some counselors working hourly basis. So mainly it's all about our salaries and personnel costs that this type of services take, but also the IT part. So we do use heavily IT services, and we do technical development, website, and the chat. So in pink are the stuff that are costly in our work. But then we do a lot of networking with all kinds of NGOs, officials on different levels. So we use our network very efficiently. And we usually get invited by professionals or practitioners to trainings, and then they provide the premises. We don't organize that much trainings ourselves. So, and when we do the trainings, we don't necessarily go directly only to have a training for nurses or directly for maternity clinics, but we want to bring professionals from all different fields in the same area, for example, in the same city, so they get to know each other and they know how child protection side of services. So we want to sort of lower the fences in between these professionals in our training and bring them together to work together. So also the client doesn't sort of fall in between these different sectors, if you get my point. And we are every day present in social media in some form, and big thanks to Janne, who is active in Facebook. We talk about all kinds of stuff and share news items and stuff. So that's how we get wider and wider audiences for our cause. And lately we haven't been, well, it doesn't seem like we're doing any big campaign anytime soon, because those are costly. Even the marketing agencies do them pro bono, but they're still 35 to 50,000 euros per campaign. So we don't have that kind of money very easily. And also the national surveys, those we are not able to fund anytime soon. They cost about 12,000 euros. But we have been doing EU projects before. That's how I actually was hired to AFINet Foundation to work in an EU project. And I know that's how I know Mr. Professor Bellerman, for example, and Lorna Templeton. We worked in an EU project. So we have been coordinating one and partnering in few others. So we are very open for all kinds of collaborating requests or ideas. to find funding on EU level. I thank you very much for your attention. Please contact us even after this. Here are our contact information. You may follow us on Facebook, and in the end, the references for you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Minna, for your excellent talk. Before we move on to the discussion, I just want to remind everyone that this is part of a series of webinars, and we will have webinars on a monthly basis. And probably for everyone who enjoyed the talk today, especially the webinar in April on the 20th held by Anne Whittaker on the Parents Under Pressure program might be of interest. But I would like to move forward to questions and remarks, and you could just write down in the chat box if you have got any questions for Minna, and then I will I will give you the space for asking your questions. And since I don't see any questions at the moment, maybe I could. There is one. Anya has got a question. Could you turn off your camera and unmute yourself?
Shall I turn on the camera?
I think that's nicer.
Okay. So, hello, thank you. Thank you very much, Minna, for this interesting talk. I was thinking about the, you said that in your chat groups, you mainly have girls and that you don't reach boys for the groups. And I just wanted to ask if you can, maybe you have said it and I missed it, how you recruit the participants for the groups, because it's really a pity that boys don't participate. I think they could profit from these groups also. And I think it has probably a lot to do with gender role orientation, that girls are more likely to talk about psychological problems. But yeah, maybe you could talk about more.
Yeah, I got your question, your point. Yes, and like I said, it's the narrative way of we conduct that we use the discussion platform, and I think girls are more prone to using that kind of type of work. And I said we should probably think. Well, let me start with the reaching out and the marketing. We try to avoid using pink and girls' hair floating in the air, but some, like group after group, we find ourselves doing that again and again. That we do, but we do have to like put more attention to the fact, like what type of picture world, like what kind of pictures we use, what kind of words do we use, and also how we advertise. What do we say the group is about? Is it about please come share your thoughts, or should it? I think boys they are more like assignment also oriented. So if there would be more, I don't know, but yeah, we should definitely think like what kind of the structure of the group, that it's not just in writing, but you can also do different kind of stuff there in the group, because the web world really allows you to use different kind of methods. They can share their own pictures or videos or whatnot, and not only by writing. Yeah, we have to be more innovative with that, and also ask from the boys. We have to organize a focus group of boys and ask them, what do you want? What would work for you? But
Yeah.
they are difficult to. It's difficult to find these guys, these blokes, to come work with us and tell us that that's what we should do.
Yeah, and maybe offer separated groups. Because
Yes, and also the counselors. I don't know. Maybe the counselors should then be guys.
Mm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
With the father groups, we have noticed, and I actually even asked in the father group that I interviewed, and they said it doesn't make any difference whether the counselor is a woman or a man. They said like they were being diplomatic. They were super sweet and nice guys, and they said that it's how professional the counselor is and how empathetic. That's what matters, not the sex. So yeah. But with the young boys, it might be a different case.
Mm. Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. Richard has written that he's got lots of questions, so I think I'd prefer to go over to Øyvind, if I pronounce it correctly, who mentioned that there's one question before we get to Richard.
Yes, thank you very much. Is the sound okay?
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And thank you for a very fine presentation. It's really impressive how you, the very creative work, and also how you cooperate with the local professionals. And I was wondering, you use a lot of social media, and you said that you are very attentive to personal information and confidentiality and those questions. And I wonder if you have encountered any challenges, for example, Facebook and these platforms, and how you have met them or solved them, or yeah.
Yeah, like I said, the people are quite courageous, and they actually use. We can tell that people are actually using the Facebook, their real accounts. Of course, in the end of the day, we don't know how, but it seems like that people are actually using their personal, very personal, and they're not fake accounts. So when they comment something we have been sharing or something, so they use their personal accounts. But when they enter our groups, then they are like anonymous, and then they join us with their nicknames. So there's sort of the difference. So we use it for reaching out and inviting people to come to our to use our services. But once they start using our services, they become anonymous, so to say. But people are quite openly actually, and we find it interesting. A lot of celebrities in Finland have started to, for example, we quite often share these type of ladies magazines articles, or if some celebrity opens up about their life, because we think it lowers sort of the stigma and the shame and the guilt, and people realize that, okay, this is something we can share and we can talk about, and I can tell my neighbor and I can tell my friend if she's already talking about, you know what I'm saying? So, yeah.
So I understand you correctly that this really hasn't been much of a problem.
No. But we were on the data protection side. We are very, like I said, we take that seriously, because then when people come with their nicknames and anonymously, and they write about quite very personal stuff and their life stories, and we are very cautious that it's not linked to their email account, for example, and nobody can crash our system and find something that can be used for some other ugly purposes. So that's when the data protection comes to place.
Yeah. Thank you.
As I can see, since Ed threw another question in, I think I would postpone Richard a little bit more, for giving him the opportunity to ask several questions afterwards. So Ed was asking, has a question about using self-compassion with AFMs, and probably Ed, you could just ask the question yourself in more detail.
Yeah, excellent. One of the things that trying to turn my camera off so you can see me. One of the things I struggle with here in Northern Ireland, people beat themselves up considerably. The amount of self-loathing I hear right across the population, not with specific groups, in general. People have a tendency to really beat themselves up. And one of the things that strikes me about some of the ethos behind 5-step work, it looks at family members as ordinary people affected by a very stressful situation. And I wonder, and I think because with COVID and working with healthcare staff and the stress and the strain and everything that people are experiencing over these last 10 months, a lot of my work has been influenced a lot by self-compassion and some of the work by Christian Neff. I just wonder, not just aimed at yourself, has anyone else looked at the role of self-compassion with affected family members?
Sorry, long silence. Yeah, you're absolutely right. If I understood you right, that people are like really harsh on themselves. Do you mean? And I'm not sure if I picked up what you were saying.
Yeah, I just wonder, when you look at particularly research, is there any specific research? Because the research around self-compassion is it improves well-being for a general population. I wonder, does anyone know of any evidence of it used with addictive family members or affected family members?
Just for myself, Ed, and others, no, and this is Richard Velleman here. No, I don't know of any work. I mean, as you say, it's a very common phenomenon amongst working with affected family members, both children and young adults and other adults, that people take a lot of personal responsibility on themselves, and they give themselves a very hard time. And you hear it the whole time with children thinking they've done something wrong and that's why their parents are behaving the way they are, or parents saying, where did we go wrong? What did we do wrong? All those sorts of things. So the taking of personal responsibility is a massive issue. And as you say, it's one of the things we try and address within the 5-step method. And I know that you also do that within Steps to Cope. But I don't know of the research on self-compassion. As soon as you said the term, that made sense to me, but it's not something I've read about at all. So I wonder if you could circulate some information about it. And that may be something that we need to think about, how we incorporate it in much of the work we do, because in a sense, that's what we're trying to do in a lot of what we're doing in the 5-step method and so on. And I'm sure it's what a lot you're trying to do within the fragile childhood, Minna. But I've not actually come across it labeled as such. And labeling is very helpful because then it creates a framework around it, which then we can think about how we might research it. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, Janne was immediately, my colleague was very interested on that, but and Laura can confirm as well from there that we find this with working with the parents, the young parents. They want to be the absolute perfect parents, and Laura always tells in the trainings that they read all the books there are on child psychology. They cultivate their own fruits and vegetables, and they are the most perfect parent they ever can be, and then they absolutely collapse because they cannot take it, and the childhood trauma sort of takes over and forbids them to, you know what I'm saying, and it's just too much that they ask from themselves, and I'm not gonna be anything like my mother was or my father was, and I'm gonna be the super mom, and then they fail and the whole card house sort of collapses. So it's very interesting, Ed, that you brought this up.
Yeah, I just saw that Ed, you were also asked to give some more, to provide some links to material in the chat. There are already some ideas popping up, but this means now I would hand over to Richard, who has got several questions in his mind.
Well, some of them are not questions, some of them are just comments. But first thing I wanted to say was thank you so very much, Minna. This is was fascinating. I think you made an excellent presentation. I'm always astounded at how good people's English is when it's not their first language. And I know I'm used to it from people from Finland and also from Holland and often from Germany. And it just makes me realize how awful we are generally in the UK at speaking anything other than not very good English. But so I thought that was marvelous. So thank you, Minna. And I think it's just, there's so much for all of us in this field to learn from what has been happening over the last 34 years. It's amazing. It just demonstrates that it is possible to develop a set of programs for affected family members, in this case primarily for children, but it does that. They're all, as you said at the beginning, they're all affected family members, and to sustain them over a long period of time, even in a relatively small country where therefore resources are going to be less available than in much larger and probably better resource countries. So I just think it's a very, very hopeful message. For me, there were a lot of things which came out which were very interesting. I think a lot goes back to Tuovo's vision right at the beginning. So the idea of branding was one that's been right at the heart, I think, of what Fragile Childhood has been. Just the name in Finnish, which I won't try and pronounce. Can you just say what it is, Minna?
Yes, it's actually, I wanted to mention it. It's lasin and lapsus, and it's something when a bottle breaks and you get these shatters of glass. It's called, in the direct translation is glassy childhood, like pieces of glass childhood. Right. So it works really well in Finnish. Yes, yes.
So that idea of giving it a title, which had some meaning and which people could understand quite easily, which also translates very well. So Fragile Childhood is very clever because it's fragile in so many ways. The bottles are fragile when they break, but also childhood is fragile. I mean, it's very clever, but keeping that for 34 years as this strap line, using that then to develop some very interesting campaigns, media campaigns. I mean, Tuovo, who, by the way, did try and join today, and both Gallus and I were trying to help him get on, and eventually he failed and left. And I thought that was very ironic and very amusing, given that he was always right at the forefront of being able to use media and taught us all a lot about how to use media. But then he couldn't get onto the onto Microsoft Teams, which I think is great. Anyway, the idea of branding, the idea of campaigns, I think are really central to what we can all take from this and learn from it. Thank you very much for talking a bit about funding as well, because that's always a problem. It's always a bugbear for people about, well, yes, it sounds like a really great idea, but how could we do this in our country? And it's interesting that you were talking about it being done on initially individual project funding, and it's only with a lot of success over a long period of time that people then began to think about funding it as core funding rather than project funding. And that's, again, a very useful lesson. There were some particular questions I wanted to ask. I mean, although it's been very successful over 34 years, you implied that there was very little research and evaluation that had been done over those 34 years. And I mean, obviously that's a pity. I'm surprised in a way that you managed to get continued funding, given that you don't have very good evaluation of what the original funding has in each year or each period has provided. And I wondered what the view in the AFINet Foundation and particularly in Fragile Childhood was about how you might improve your research and evaluation successes. I mean, obviously partnering, I would have thought, with local universities might be helpful. I wonder if there's something we could think about doing with partners within AFINet. So that's one question I wanted to ask. A second one was about males, attracting males, and how difficult that is. I mean, if I think about all the research we've done over the years into adult affected family members, the number of males who have come forward has been a very small proportion of the overall samples in almost every piece of research that we've done. And of those men, it's almost invariably fathers who come forward, somehow being a father partnered with a mother who've got a child who they're worried about. It seems to overtake the reticence that men seem to have about coming forward for help in any way. But I would just like some more comments from you. I know Andrew's already had a bit of a discussion about the male stuff, but I think that's very interesting. And obviously you got feedback from the fathers in your group that they didn't really mind about the gender of the person running it. But of course, in a sense, asking people who've already demonstrated that they're willing to join a group about what they want is not terribly helpful, because what we want is to know about the people who don't join the groups about what they want. And that's always the problem. And then the two other things. One of them is the hopeful message that you had about children coping. Talking about children as active agents rather than simply recipients of misuse and abuse from parents and other people, that children actually were active agents thinking about how they would cope in the situations that they were in, and therefore what they wanted in terms of help was advice and help about where they could go if they needed to, and what other strategies they might have about which will help them in this active coping. So I thought that was really interesting. I'd like to hear more about that. And finally, the issue of industry funding, which is always, I think, a very interesting one. And it seems, in a sense, it's built in Finland, in that the alcohol monopoly has to provide money. Sorry, my screen's gone funny, has to provide money, which you then take. But I mean, you'll be aware that in many parts of the world, many people feel very uncomfortable about the idea of having any partnership with the alcohol industry. And I'd be interested to know yours and the A-Clinic Foundation's view about that as well. So I'm sorry, a lot of things to throw at you.
It's easiest to start from the final question, the latest one. Yes, you're absolutely right, and we are quite strict about, and I think it's written in we have ethical guidelines and rules that we should not be taking money from the beer industry or alcohol industry as such, but the alcohol monopoly is a different case, because it's actually guided and steered and administered under the Ministry of Social Affairs and Health. So it is and it's the money that they do for the responsible drinking project. And we've been really open about it under our campaigns in YouTube. I think we do say it there, who has been funding this project, and we probably didn't have their logo in the end because they didn't want it to be there. We only have Fragile Childhood logo there, but we do say where the funding comes from, and we didn't get any bad mouthing on that in Finland. But in Finland, I would not collaborate, and it's in our rules not to tobacco industry or alcohol industry, like beer industry, not to deal with them, because beer you can sell in everyday shops in Finland. So they are not in the alcohol. It's only the stronger alcohol over 5.5 that 5.5 you can still sell in the shops, but anything stronger than that is only in the licensed alcohol monopoly, and that we do take money for. And they were actually doing this. They also funded this latest COVID-19 campaign we had, and it was showing in their. It was showing in their in the shops, in the wine shops that they have. There are big screens, and they had the declaration of family peace shown there while you were buying the alcohol. So we thought it could have been really effective, but it's difficult to make this study on how effective it has been on the campaigns. And this brings to the second question you had about the evaluation. We do evaluate, and we do monitor, and we do have statistics, and we collect data very seriously. So, and we have to report that to our funder on a yearly basis. So we know, we measure everything that we do basically. But what I meant by that we don't do sort of an academic research, that we don't have, or to say go towards sort of a evidence-based practice type of work. We know that it's effective for the people who participate, but to say build it in a model like and for example go back after 6 months or after 1 year or 5 years back to the participants and say okay, and make these long-term studies, that we haven't had resources, or we do follow on an everyday basis, but not sort of in the longer run. But yes, that's a good idea. We should be, and we try to collaborate more with academics in this field, and university would be excellent, or AFINet for that matter. What was the first one, the remark you made about the branding? Yes. Yes, I wanted to say about that we are not so jealous about our brand. What has made it popular is that when we organize these, for example, the council groups in the cities, and we go to the local NGO, it can be some child protection or mental health NGO, but they have, there are people who are, there are professionals who have work experience in counseling similar type of peer support groups. And we go them and we say, hey, how about organizing a fragile childhood group? And we train you for that, and start organizing them in your city, and you can call them fragile childhood group. So we let them to use our brand, even though we just go train the professionals and then we leave, and they might still, after the funding has ended from our side, it stays there, and they start doing it as part of their work, and they can call it fragile childhood work. So yes, we are not so jealous over the brand. Of course, we want to look up that it's not, you know, it's not used. It is used properly. Yeah.
That's a very interesting comment about not being jealous or precious about the brand, and therefore getting a lot more coverage because of that. Again, there's probably something up there for many of us to learn from. And I think the thing about research and evaluation, as you know, I've been tasked in at least one other of the webinars that I organised later on a webinar about research in the AFINet area. And so perhaps that will be a time for us to take up some of these questions about how we might think about helping you and us do more, a slightly different type of research than the evaluations that you currently do, or translate some of those evaluations into more, in quotes, academic work, so that it has a wider audience. Thank you.
And Janne is actually preparing his doctoral thesis on this subject, so in a few years' time.
Wonderful. I see slowly people are fading out. So, but I still have another question or comment, something in between, which adds a bit to what Richard has been talking about, which I think If I look at the data you presented, I think it's mainly consisted of quite small groups. For example, you show there was something like N7 people who were really happy with the group. And I would fully agree with Richard that, of course, the main issue is if you have people who decide to enter the group and stay there, then of course in the end they will be more or less happy with what they have been offered. And I just wonder that you also presented some survey data, which means actually it looks like from time to time you're conducting some surveys in Finland. And I think, well, the criteria you presented were rather soft. You know, it's this kind of research that something like 1/4 of all children have some negative experiences due to alcohol consumption of parents. But I think these are, it's far less people who decide to join one of your groups, which would be those who are more severely affected. But for example, just very simple, if you would make a small study with people identified via a survey, which might be attractive or what might be barriers to use your fragile childhood project, this might already give you some information where you might improve your issues. And I also think it would be, of course, if you want to get some scientific evidence, you need to look, for example, is it better than nothing if we offer fragile childhood or whatever? So you would need to have a certain kind of comparison group, but I think we will discuss this in more detail when Richard will be talking about scientific options. But I think there's quite a lot of options you might have, even with limited resources.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
very valuable comment. Yeah.
And I mean, this goes not only to you, but also to other people who are, well, watching that. We hope that AFINet will become more and more a kind of a platform for exchange regarding such questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
But and I wanted also to add that there are quite a few further interesting comments in the chat function. We will go through all of them, but I don't see any further questions at the moment. And
Ed, Gallus, can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
It's Jim here. I wasn't able to put in the chat because I don't think if you're a guest, if they categorize you as a guest because of the way you've entered the meeting, I don't think the chat is available to you. But anyway, I'm here now. Minna, thank you very much. I mean, I really enjoyed your talk. It's very impressive, as other people have said, the amount of work you've done, and you know, with not a huge number of people. So I think that's very impressive. One of the things I think I detected, tell me if I'm wrong, is that what you were saying is really very free of technical jargon, and I wonder whether I've got that right. And it doesn't seem to me your work is very burdened with too much of a theoretical model. I mean, it may be that the word fragile childhood, the expression fragile childhood, implies a particular model, but I don't get the impression that, you know, you as a team are all coming with a particular theoretical framework or a particular type of training. Your work strikes me as having been very, very practical. I mean, you've found ways of reaching out to people, children and adults, finding ways to get people to talk, to communicate with people. But am I right that you're actually managing to do your excellent work without much of a theoretical model? or is it really there? Is it implicit? So, you know, when you go around and talk about what you're doing, you do actually say to people, well, the fragile childhood model is this.
Yeah. Yes, thank you for your question. Yes, I didn't say in the beginning that we are very pragmatic and practical what we do. But for example, when we go to give trainings to professionals, we always follow the same model when we bring up the issues. The whole point of going and meeting people who work with young people, families, is to find them and identify them and encourage them to seek help. But we want to start by telling them, for example, how much of an issue, how much we know from research that there are these people around us. And then we go on actually telling on about risks, protective factors, and resilience. So we tell them that these are like our core thematic areas, and they're super helpful to know and build around these, because it's all about mapping the risks the children live in and in the environment they live in, and strengthen what's good in their life and give them like hope. And then it's about interaction, in the social interaction, to build the resilience. And it's not some inherited trait that some children do better than the other, but everyone can do better if they have reliable adults, and you can be there to build that resilience with the child, even though the parent is not willing to stop or admit the problem. So that is sort of very much coming back to you, gentlemen and ladies. So this is the theoretical model in behind, and then like I said, we pretty much follow the ideas of 5-step method of giving them opportunities to speak up, giving information, coping strategies, and so forth. So this is the underlying idea on how we run this very practical, like you say, work that we do.
Yes, thank you. That's very helpful. So actually, your model is a kind of risk and resilience model, I suppose. And I'm rather ambivalent about theory. I don't know how important it is, but so I just wonder whether you think it would be helpful to really work out in more explicit detail what your model is, or whether that would actually spoil things. You'd be much better, better sticking to the very sensible sort of communicative, reaching out sort of work that you're doing without being too worried about the theory.
Okay. Yeah. But yes, you're right. We don't make a strong connection, and we don't. Yeah. And maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we don't need to.
Okay, wonderful. Now I see one after another is leaving. No further questions. I don't know if Richard, it seems like Richard wants to say something since you've turned on your camera.
Well, I just wanted to remind everyone, I don't know, were you going to talk about the next webinar?
Well, the next webinar will most likely be in Portuguese, but on the 23rd of February, about motivational interviewing, data from Brazil. But we will hope to manage a certain kind of translation. So check our website and we will keep you updated. Then 1 month later, on the 23rd, Jim Offord will talk about policy and practical issues regarding family members. And I've already told that on the 20th of April, there will be a presentation on the Parents Under Pressure program, plus several further webinars. They can all be, you can all check our website. And in case if there are any non-AFINet members among us here, just remember we had some problems with our membership application form, but it's working again. So become a member, it's free. and will grant you access to materials on the website. Yeah, but I think that's enough of advertisement. I would really again like to thank you, Minna, and to congratulate you for an excellent talk, which will be available via YouTube as well in the future. And we will not have to edit anything because I think it was all perfectly understandable and your English really is fine. So I think you can put it right on the website. Thank you all again, and I hope to see you at the next AFINet webinars, and have a nice day. And see you.
Thank you. Thank you for your interest, and have a good week.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, Minna. Wonderful. Speak later. That was great.
Bye.
Bye-bye.